Yo, what's up, guys? My name is Oliver Hayes alongside Harrison Simeon. We are back for episode 15 of the skobuffs SportsCast. And obviously, there's another person here, so you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Cory Lopez, voice of the women's basketball program for the last 9 years, and also a teacher. But don't be nervous. You guys aren't in my class. I think we'll be okay with that.
Well, maybe down the line. We'll have to see.
There you go. There you go. Juniors and seniors, man. You're all welcome if you can get in.
Yeah, well, we're both sophomores, so yeah, we definitely have the time to do so.
All right.
But yeah, I don't know. I feel like a good place to start is just get to know you a little bit more, and kind of just hear your journey a little bit as two people who are kind of in the same, or want to do the same thing that you do.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be hard for you guys to take the same journey that I had. I mean, the business has changed so much, really, even over the last 5 to 10 years. I mean, you think about all the social media, web streaming that goes on. Obviously, we're sitting here in podcasting and doing stuff like that. I started in small-town radio and small-town TV back in the late 80s. I was still in high school. I hadn't even gone to college yet. I was still in high school, sweeping the floors, running studio cameras, gathering the weather information, putting together what goes up on the Chiron, and just kind of kept bugging them to get on the air. And eventually, I got on TV. I was doing some part-time radio stuff with some horrible hours. I mean, I worked overnights. I worked the late night shifts, which were fine, but it also meant that I had no social life kind of thing. And I did both news and sports. I think it's a good combination and I think you'll find that some of the veteran broadcasters have done both news and sports, and really the news side of it is kind of puts the journalistic side of things into it, where, it's about contacting the right people, trying to find people that you need. You have to do the same thing in sports. I mean, you're interviewing people that are on the teams, you're interviewing coaches, you're doing all this kind of stuff. So it kind of helped me with my interview skills and how to track people down and how to even check the facts, because a lot of times if you run into some programs, I mean, think about the football program here at CU. It's not really open access. So when you hear about something happening, somebody's hurt or somebody's not going to play this game, you want to find out why, you can go to the coaches, but you have to figure out how to get to those different sources and then report it as best you can. So a news and sports background was something that I had, and it was my hometown up in Scottsbluff and Gering, Nebraska, where I started. And it was funny how it worked out, because my journalism teacher had gotten a call from the local TV station to say, hey, we need a couple of what they called them interns, but it was a paid position. I was the only one who responded out of a couple of journalism classes in my high school, and the rest is history. I've been doing this thing for 30 plus years, and small town radio, worked in southern Colorado, worked in Cheyenne for a while, worked in the Front Range in Greeley, and Fort Collins and Loveland, even worked up in Estes Park for a little bit, and have crossed paths with lots of different people who are doing some really amazing things, not just the athletes, but also other broadcasters. I hired a guy, Dave Kane, in Estes Park, and he worked there for a year for us, but he was pretty fresh out of college, had interned at KOA Radio in Denver. He's the voice of the Milwaukee Bucks now. So I mean, it also tells you how long I've been working in the business, a long time. But so I've crossed paths with some pretty cool people and have tried to learn as much as I can from them. And if I gave them anything, I hope that's, that they can use. I hope that's great. But I've been doing it for a long time and have gone from radio and TV to, I do a lot of web streams now. Still lucky enough to kind of be on the radio with doing the women's broadcast, but there's also an app for that. It's on the web stream on skobuffs.com. I mean, it's all over the place. You have to think about all the different platforms and then all the social media that goes along with it. I mean, it's been amazing. It's been a fun journey. I'm not one of those get off my lawn kind of guys. I adapt with all the changes. I mean, I'm fine with it. I think it's very cool. I mean, I'm sitting here with my iPhone here and checking on the latest stuff that's going on in college basketball. I think it's a great thing. I'm not one of those guys that's like, well, I've always done it this way, and that's the way it's going to be. And then the teaching part of it too, teaching a sports broadcasting class. It sounds like they're going to have that I'm going to be able to teach in the fall as well. It was only offered as a spring option, but now I'll have a couple of semesters to meet people like you guys. I mean, you're hungry. You're getting into the business. You want to that kind of energy really keeps me going too. And I found that over I've been in the business for a long time, but that kind of infectious kind of energy, I think it's very contagious for people. If you work with somebody who's just that high drive kind of, always likes the latest thing, is willing to try some new things and stuff like that, I think that's what makes this business so much fun.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it was, I don't know, I like the points that you brought up, because I was going to ask you, later in the podcast about, some of those things that you see in a student or a successful professional, and bringing up that balance between news and sports, and that adaptability and that hunger.
I'd love to talk. I'd certainly, I could go on and on about that. So if you want to talk about that a little bit later, I'm good with that.
Yeah, no, I'd love to do that later in the podcast. Obviously, the women's team is on a tear, and I know Harrison wants to ask some questions about that. So
Yeah, I mean, I guess before we move on, I just want to say we're on episode 15. That's pretty cool. Like, I'm happy we've been able to get to this point. Been doing it pretty much all year. The first episode back right after the TCU game, football, and we've been keeping it up, and I'm just kind of impressed by it. And so before I ask you about the team, I will say, was there any moment in your journey which that really like sparked your interest in play-by-play?
That's a great question. I've always been interested in sports. I played sports, and I think that's how a lot of people get kind of into the business, because they play it so much. There comes a time when people go, we don't really need you anymore. I wanted to stay involved with it. The play-by-play aspect of it, I'm not really sure what clicked. It's funny, when I was in elementary school, I had a friend of mine, you have to write those in 10 years, in 20 years, I see, and you had to write it about another friend of yours. And this friend of mine said that I would be doing college football play-by-play, and I hadn't even really thought about it, but I love sports so much. I talked about it all the time, and this was just when I was a little squirt. My kids are, I've got one in elementary school, one going into kindergarten, and one in middle school. And I think back, like, their goals and things like that now, they're not really thinking about necessarily a career, but that one little thing kind of stuck in the back of my head. So when the note came in my journalism class when I was a senior in high school and said, the opportunity to learn more about, TV, I was lucky enough to run into somebody at that TV station who worked at a radio station that said, hey, we got a part-time position that's open. And I mean, it just kind of snowballed from there. I identify, because I watch so much sports, I identify with a lot of broadcasters. And back when I was a kid, in my age, guys like Vin Scully, just listening to him call a baseball game was just amazing. Jack Buck, Joe Buck's dad, I mean, he just legendary. Al Michaels, the Miracle on Ice, he was the voice of everything for a long time, and still is for NBC. When I identify with some of the biggest games that I saw on TV, I identify with those voices too. And I think that's what sparked it, that you really have an opportunity to tell the story of a team that you're following or teams that you're covering those games. And it's really important to a lot of people. So I understand the responsibility to it, and I understood it when I was younger. And so I think that's kind of what drove me, because I wanted to do the best that I could. And people would, you get criticism. If you're on the air for any amount of time, you get some criticism for whatever it may be. But I've always tried to do the best job that I could. And to me, when I call a game, and I think this is what it is, when I was a kid, I never had those kind of opportunities. I think I was on the radio one time when I was playing high school basketball, and I got in during a playoff game, and I remember somebody actually recorded it on a cassette tape so I could hear it. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. And I listened to the guy, and it's actually somebody I ended up working with a little bit later on at the radio station. His name was Rob Barney, and he's retired now, but he worked at the station up in western Nebraska for a long time. But he called the game, and I thought, wow, it's amazing. It sounds like a professional game to me. And I always kind of had that in the back of my mind too. Like every game that I call, that a lot of times is somebody's Super Bowl. Like they may not have, now there's more opportunities now for that stuff to be on the air. I mean, parents are holding up Facebook Live and talking and, doing stuff like that. I guess there's that, but it just adds to the story and the memories that you may have. So I think that's probably what drove it to me. I don't know if there was one spark or if it was several little sparks along the way, but that I just wanted to do that. I wanted to be the person telling the story and following the game, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I really like that because, we have a lot of people in our club in general that are somewhat interested in the aspect of play-by-play and going into that journey itself. I've even done a little bit here and there with baseball or lacrosse and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it was really great to hear about that and hear your insight. And I think this is a good time to maybe move on to the team you've been covering and followed these last 9 years that have really gone from, there were some rough ones leading up to where we are now. So just give us your general input of like this team's journey since maybe you started covering them 9 years ago, you said.
Yeah, I think a good example of how well they're playing now is I'm sitting here on this podcast. I didn't used to get a lot of requests to talk about the women's basketball program here at CU. Last year, of course, they went to the Sweet 16. I was getting text messages from people that I've worked with in the business, saying, hey, they look great, or can you come on and talk to us for a little while about it, talk about the game that's coming up. Women's basketball didn't get that kind of love around here, and there were only really a handful of programs around the nation that ever got that kind of love. I mean, if you turn on ESPN at night, I mean, you know who UConn is because of their amazing success. You know who Caitlin Clark is now because of her amazing success in Iowa. But even 5 years ago, UConn might have been the only one because they had won, 70 games in a row and they were dominating. And that's the only reason that they would put women's basketball on. So the landscape has changed so much. It's amazing, and it's a perfect time. The timing couldn't be better for the Buffs now to be this successful because the players are benefiting from more media coverage. Jalen Sherrod has been nominated for a couple of national awards. A fifth-year senior who came here as CU was the only program that offered her, as a Power 5 program, the only program that offered her a scholarship. She didn't have anything else outside of the Power 5s. And now she's being talked about and being scouted by WNBA, people that coming in and doing their cross checks and actually watching live games and things like that. 5 years ago, and I know that's when she got here, but even 5 years ago, Colorado's program wouldn't have been noticed like that if it hadn't been for first of all, for the coaching staff. J.R. Payne is amazing. The staff that she has, they are truly a family, and I'm a part of that family. Even the radio people, all the support staff that travel along with it. I mean, it's I enjoy being around them and just kind of hanging out. And there's a lot of hanging out going on when you're sitting in airports waiting for your plane, when you're on a bus trying to get to the arena, or you're headed to the hotel and you're going through bad weather and it takes forever and you spend a lot of time together. They truly are a family. And so I think that kind of culture is what J.R. Payne wanted to bring when she got here, 7 years ago. She's in her 8th season now. That culture is finally starting to permeate through, and you're seeing the results of that. They were really good last year. I don't think they realized how good they were until late in the non-conference season when they went to Milwaukee and they played Marquette, who's a very good mid-major program and a team that's normally ranked in the top 25. I don't know if they're there now, but they're very close. If they're not, they're receiving votes. They play in the Big East, the same conference as UConn plays in. And Marquette was ranked at the time. CU was getting a look, and Colorado absolutely destroyed them. just obliterated them. It's the best game I've ever seen them play. At that time, the 8 years that I saw, that was the spark last year. That was the turning point for them, that they realized that, hey, we're actually a pretty good team. And they rolled into the conference and finished third in the Pac-12. But all of that has come from the hard work that J.R. Payne and her staff and her seniors and her fifth-year seniors have put in. Jalen Sherrod came here. There was no expectation of them winning a Pac-12 championship. There was no real expectation of them even making the tournament. I mean, we didn't know that they'd be able to compete at that level. Frida Foreman's another one who's been here for a long time. And Quay Miller, who transferred in from Washington. I mean, it was a hope. And, it wasn't a promise, but it was a hope and I guess, a kind of a challenge, too, to say this is where we want to be and we want you to be a part of this. That's kind of how they recruited the players in. Kendall Wood is another one that, from Valor Christian High School. I mean, we don't have any other Colorado girls on the squad. Now, she's a legacy player. Her mom played back in the day, back in the 90s, so she was probably going to come here, but she's been one of the biggest advocates for CU basketball to any Colorado girls basketball player playing now, saying, come to CU, look at what we've built. When she got here, the momentum was starting, and I don't know if they thought that they'd be where they are now, and I'll tell you where they are now. They're one of the top teams in the nation, and they have a chance. I'm a little superstitious, but they have a chance to win a national championship. I mean, it's that simple. You have to get lucky. You have to stay injury-free. You have to play your best game in the best moments. There's a lot of things that go into winning a natty. And even to get to the Final Four, even to get to the Sweet 16 last year, you had to have a lot of things fall your way. You had to play well, but you had to have a lot of things fall your way. So, but they're that good. And, I think the attention they're getting now is well-deserved.
Yeah, I think so too. I've been able to cover a lot of them this year.
That's good.
Writing wise, so it's great to hear from different perspectives about it, because I didn't even realize about that Marquette game last year was really like kind of the catalyst of them turning into this powerhouse we see now.
It was under the radar, and again, if people were following it last year too, they had just come off a devastating loss to Utah. Like, they looked horrible. And my color analyst, my partner on the radio, Carol Callan, and I looked at each other and were like, man, like this looks like the Colorado of old, where you're not sure what team's going to show up that day. Like, they really got destroyed. They didn't play well. Utah played fantastic. I don't want to take any credit away from them, but it really knocked Colorado down. But then they go to Milwaukee, and right before Christmas, and they just handled Marquette in a, the Al McGuire Sports Center, a historic place where when I was a kid, Al McGuire was another one of those broadcasters. I was like, oh my God, Al McGuire, he coached Marquette to a national championship. I'm thinking, what a great place to go visit and watch a basketball game. I get to sit here and call a game, and then I watch the Buffs just absolutely kill them and play the best that they played. I thought that could be a catalyst. Carol and I kind of talked about it. We were like, well, that's a heck of a bounce back. That's the best we've ever seen them play. Excuse me. But they built on that. And the really good teams can do that. And that's what told me they had a chance to make a run last year.
Cool.
Yeah, that's sweet hearing, like, I don't know, your perspective on it as someone,
Excuse me.
No, you're okay. But hearing your perspective from, someone who works with the team as long as you have, and, day in, day out, because for me as a freshman, I was still kind of, getting situated and everything. And I was kind of, I don't know. It wasn't the Marquette game that put me on. It was the UCLA game. I don't know. I saw that it was a big matchup, and I was like,
it was a big game.
And I was like, okay, I'm close. Like, it's a Sunday. Like, let's show up. And yeah, I don't know. Obviously, like, the outcome of that game, but I mean, just watching them play in person and seeing how fast Jalen Sherrod is and how skilled these girls are. I think I think that's a very underrated part of their game.
Well, if you're talking about last year's UCLA game, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about. So there is something that came out of that, though. Kendall Wetta hit a huge three-pointer at the end of that game.
Yeah.
And I said it in the post-game interview to her while it was going up over the PA and everybody could hear. I said, you are the last person in this gym that I expected to have the basketball in the corner and shoot a three. Like her game had nothing to do with offense. It was all about her defense, her hard work. She knew how to run the system. She could find the open person, but she's not a shooter. From that game on, she gained the confidence that the coaches have been telling her over and over and over, if you're open, shoot. It's okay. If you miss, we have rebounders, we have people. But if the ball finds you in a spot where you can shoot. And she was really reluctant to do that. Ball finds her in the UCLA game. She knocks down a big three-pointer. Her confidence is built. She's had some good offensive games to go along with her tenacious defense, her rebounding skills, which are good. I mean, for somebody who only stands about 5'11", and then running the offense and getting assists. She's had a couple of games this year where she's had 5 or 6 assists per game, and maybe not had to score, but she's kind of facilitated the whole offense. When Jalen is the focal point of the other team's defense, Kendall can come in and kill you in different ways. So that UCLA game was a kind of a catalyst for her. And I could pick out some games all through the season last year and even some games this year where there have been individual players who have realized, oh, I'm a pretty good player. Like everything that the coaches have been telling me is true, and I need to start believing in myself. And I think that's what has made them the team that they are right now.
Yeah, I really love that, like hearing that story, and I don't know, just seeing how you can go on a game-by-game basis and kind of, I don't know, tell the journey of, each player on the team.
I spent a lot of time with them.
Yeah. But going off of that, I don't know, you said something earlier about how calling these games is kind of like, some of these players like Super Bowls.
Mm-hmm.
So for a team of this magnitude with, some of the games that like we talked about last season, but I don't know, we haven't even gotten to this season really. What's it like calling games for a team of this magnitude that's gonna, I don't know, probably be watched more so than, a lot of other stuff that you've done? Like, no offense, obviously, but
yeah.
I mean, this seems to really be, I don't know, arguably the Super Bowl of your career.
Hey, man, the first game that I called this year, the first game of the regular season, it was on TNT on the national broadcast. I mean, how many people are listening to me, right? I still treat it as a pretty big deal. I know that I have some, I guess we could say, loyal women's basketball listeners that will actually sync up the radio broadcast to the TV broadcast so that they can listen to us while they can watch it on TV. So I know that's cool. But it gives me some amazing opportunities to call some games in places that I could only dream of when I was a young broadcaster. I mean, the first round of the NCAA tournament was at Cameron Indoor Stadium last year. I mean, come on. College basketball at Cameron Indoor?
The first 2 games were.
First 2 games. They played Middle Tennessee State, and then they played Duke. Now, the Cameron Crazies and all of that, not as big in women's basketball, okay? So it wasn't a loaded house, and they're jumping on the stands, and it's rocking inside. But it was a good-sized crowd, and it was pretty loud. And I was up in the crow's nest, actually. We don't even sit courtside at Cameron. The broadcasters actually sit up in a crow's nest that is up above. It's like it would be like a second level, but then it sticks out over the crowd. And it's one of the best views that I've ever had to call a basketball game. I mean, it was amazing. It was a trek to get up there, to get into the crow's nest, but it gave me goosebumps, to say, Buffs basketball, welcome to Cameron Indoor Stadium, in Durham, North Carolina. And it's just like, wow. Calling a game against the defending national champions this year in Vegas. Even, I know they're in conference and they're not going to be anymore. Pauley Pavilion is like, I mean, double-digit national championships. The floor is named after John Wooden. The jerseys hanging in the rafters of both the men's and women's players that are there. I mean, Lou Alcindor and, Gail Goodrich, and you just go on and on and on. It's an opportunity for me. The more success that they have, I see it is an opportunity for me. And whether I have more or less people listening because they're kind of more on a national basis, I do realize through my 9 years, I do have loyal people that are listening. They're relying on me to get it out there because the Buffs aren't on national TV all the time. Not everybody's got the Pac-12 network. Sometimes the Pac-12 network shows another game, and you have to go find Pac-12. I think it's Pac-12 Mountain. There's like 7 different channels where you got to figure out all this stuff. Not everybody's got cable. Not everybody's got FUBU. Not everybody's got the Pac-12 deal. So I'm a lifeline for a lot of Buffs fans just to listen to, and sometimes they have to go about their day because we play at weird times sometimes. So I know I'm kind of that lifeline, Carol and I both, to tell the story of what's going on. So to me, every game is still a Super Bowl. And I'll tell you a quick story when it comes to broadcasting and the journey that I've had. I have a friend of mine who coaches down in Pueblo now, but I called his high school state championship, and he played tiny little 1A Grenada High School down in southeast Colorado. And so it was 96, I think it was, but I called his 1A state championship on the radio. He had, his mom or his sister or somebody had recorded the entire game on a cassette tape, and he still has it today. And every once in a while he listens to it. Now I hope he's converted it to digital because I don't think you can find any cassette players now. But, he would always talk about that the years after that when he went to high school and then started coaching, that he still has that. So it's important to people. So I try to do the best that I can.
Yeah, just hearing that gives me goosebumps. it's I don't know, just makes you feel like this is like why you do it. And yeah.
It is. Yeah, it is. It's a lot of the reason why I do it. I mean, certainly not for the money. Because there's not a lot of money, and you guys know this, and I hope that your professors and instructors and teachers and everybody that you run into, I mean, they're honest with you. There's a lot of people that make good money, and they do a great job, and they've worked really hard, and if you work really hard, you have a chance to make some money, but not everybody does, and so you better love it because it's a grind sometimes. It's not so much a grind for me anymore. I'm lucky enough I can pick and choose some things, but I also have another full-time job. I do digital marketing and social media and PR work. My wife's company, Focus Marketing and PR, she's had that for about 15 years. That's my main job that I do a lot of stuff for, and I'm lucky enough that I have that and that I have the flexibility to be able to continue to be the voice of the Buffs and to do a lot of high school games, and when called upon to jump in for when people need to, I've called, college hockey down in the Springs with CC when they've needed somebody to fill in. I did the Eagles up in Fort Collins on the radio when their play-by-play guy wasn't around. I kind of get some of those phone calls, and with my job now, I'm flexible enough that I can do that. But yeah, it's not for the love of the money. It's just the love of doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think another pretty cool thing about this season, it's been easy to love and easy to watch, and it's also been really cool to see how some of the players are now starting to get that shine of national attention that they've, worked for a long time, like Jalen getting on outlets like the Players Tribune, getting on national TV, and attention from ESPN and others. J.R. Payne's been, a lot more widely praised than she has in the past. You talked about being around the team a lot. What's a story that you maybe heard or learned about as your time with broadcasting that's really sort of come to fruition this year that maybe hasn't gone under the radar?
Well, I mean, I don't know if there's one story, but the little stories about this year's team is. There's things that people don't know, like Jalen, and I'll stay on Jalen. She's such an interesting character. She's been here for a long time, so I've been lucky enough to know her for a while. She graduated a long time ago. She's got a couple of master's degrees. She's all about putting in the work. She wants to be a forensic scientist. She's doing stuff with the Boulder Police Department and shadowing them because she's interested in actually being either a criminologist or some kind of forensic something. And we don't talk about much on the broadcast. I mean, obviously we're talking a lot of basketball. Sophie Gerber, who is a walk-on, and I guess we can really call her a preferred walk-on because she, for a year or two, she had a scholarship when the Buffs didn't have enough scholarship players. They actually got her a scholarship, but she's been a walk-on for her 4 years. She's going to be a doctor. You know, Haley Smith, who graduated a few years ago, got her graduate degree from Stanford, but she's an amazing engineer. The stories behind just the basketball, and this hasn't changed, and I hope it doesn't change. And this is not to put down any other of the men's sports in college football, because I think they get a bad rap. I think there's some amazing players on there, but you know, a football player, well, you take basket weaving and yoga, you know, as a class so that you can get your stuff. And that's not necessarily the case. On the women's side of things, people don't realize that you have, as a woman in high-level college, the goals that they have set for themselves and the availability of scholarships and money is not as great as it is on the men's side of things. So if you're lucky enough to get a scholarship, it probably means you were a 4.0 athlete in high school, that you were a 4.0 student, that you were probably in some clubs, you probably already have some credits from what you've studied, and you darn well better be close to a 4.0 student when you're here at the university, because otherwise that, on top of the scholarship, you're getting grants and all these other things. And I'm not saying the women's basketball players or, you know, lacrosse players or soccer players have to work harder than the guys, but it helps that you're a high achiever, that you have a drive, because they can go find somebody else, and the program is not looked at as with the spotlight like football is or men's basketball is. You know, for some D1 schools like baseball is too. So you almost feel like you have to do it better. And what I found and this isn't just the case with CU, and CU is a great example, but other colleges that I've followed or called or gotten to know the coaches or some of the players, is there's a high drive in women's basketball that's just amazing. The student athletes are really smart, a lot smarter than I am. When I sit down and have conversations with them, I mean, it's just amazing. Their goals and dreams aren't so much about, you know, candy canes and unicorns, and, you know, they're realistic dreams, and they have every belief in their head that they're going to get there. And to be around people like that is another one of those reasons why I like doing this, being around high-driven people who have solutions to get through the challenges of their life and get to where they want to go. They have a plan. It's very cool to be around people like that.
Yeah, I think that's really cool, because, I mean, I haven't had that kind of perspective on it because I've just watched them play. Yeah. And maybe I've seen a player like Aaronette Vonleh really get better as her career's gone on, or, you know, just in a basketball sense, how these stories have come to be. But outside of the world of sports, I think that it's really important to emphasize that, especially with how women's sports are, where you see kind of how limited the opportunities can be at the professional level.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. I mean, obviously there's not as many WNBA franchises as there are NBA franchises, but the WNBA isn't the end-all, be-all for women's professional sports. On the women's side of things, actually, athletes can make a lot more money by going overseas. They can go play down in Australia. They can play in Europe. They can play in China. At one time they played in Russia, but after what happened with Brittany Griner, that, you know, you're not going to see a lot of that going on anymore. But they can make make a good living, I can say. And over in Europe, I know this is the case a lot of times, is that they have dorms over there. Nice dorms, not
college.
I mean, nice dorms. And so they live rent-free, and everything's taken care of for them, and they're paid a salary on top of that, which is pretty amazing. And that's not necessarily the case with the WNBA. They make good money, but they're not going to get rich, they need to spin endorsement deals, and just like the NIL works, you got to start spinning some endorsement deals if you really want to make some money here in the United States. But I mean, the benefit to that is you get to, I mean, you're a superstar, man. You know, ESPN's on it big time, and you get to play in front of your friends and family all the time too. You know, you're closer to home. I mean, it's a grind if you go over to Europe or down to Australia or China and places like that. Imagine being that far away, and people can make a good living that way. But yeah, the WNBA is the pinnacle, but there's not a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, like you even hear about how like top 10 draft picks will get cut before they even get to play a game.
Maya Hollingshed is the best example. Maya Hollingshed graduated 2 years ago, was the best player for the Buffs. Took them to the first set of NCAA tournament appearances in her 5th year. She was drafted 8th in the first round, drafted 8th by the Las Vegas Aces. She didn't even make the team.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's, you know, it's a tough business.
Yeah.
It's hard to break into the pros. Maya's not the only one that has gone through that. I mean, I'm not sure even half of the number 1 draft picks made their teams that year. I mean, there's just so many veteran players, and there's just so many limited spots. And they only carry, I only think they carry 11. They don't even carry 12.
Oh, wow.
You carry 11 on the roster. You can't have a practice squad, you know, and that's to try to, you know, the WNBA hasn't made money. They're starting to. They're getting close where they can, you know, the owners are really, you know, can really start making some money. You better have deep pockets if you own if you own an NBA franchise and a WNBA franchise. A lot of times the men's program, or at least the money from the owner, is supplementing what's going on with the WNBA. I don't think they're that far away from actually being self-sustainable now with the explosion of women's basketball really in the national spotlight. You know, more people are going, but yeah, there's some real limited things. Like college is it for a lot of players, and to be a pro, it's so hard to go that far in any kind of sport, to actually be a professional athlete. So for a lot of these players, this is the last time they're going to play at this high level. And even on this team this year, there are players that when they graduate, they'll be done. That they may end up going into the coaching ranks. I mean, we've seen a lot of former Buffs players that are coaches now. I mean, Shelly Sheets is, you know, an All-American, and she's coaching on J.R. Payne's staff now. But yeah, you better have something else in mind too. If you're going to if you're going to the University of Colorado, I mean, think of the opportunity that you have to study and learn just about anything you want to learn and get a degree. You know, a lot of these players, that's their big focus.
Yeah, I mean, on the other side of that coin, I think I remember Tayana Jones is on a pro team in Australia now.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see where some of these big name players like Frida Foreman or Jalen Sherrod, Quay Miller, where they end up after this year, which I think will be their last year. I don't know if Frida has any eligibility left.
Frida has another year. She can come back, and I think she's going to. I don't know if they've talked a lot about it. That she still has eligibility, and some of the problems they run into with some of the players is, like I said, they can go on and do other things, and it's not always basketball. You know, they may want to just get their life going. They've already got a degree. They've already got their master's. I mean, look at Jay, man. I mean, she's running out of things to take. You know, she's got to be done with school because there's nothing else she can take here at CU. But for Frida, just as an example, Frida could go back to Denmark and go back to Europe and go play professionally, and she'll be fine. She over the summer played for the Danish national team. She's going to be on the national team for the next few years. I mean, it'd be cool for them to qualify for the Olympics, but she's played in a World Cup competition. She could go back home and just go do that next year, and she'd be fine. The question is the drive still there to achieve something? So we'll see how this year goes. I mean, if they don't go as far as they want to go, you know, you're still going to have some pretty good players coming back, and if Frida's another one that comes back, I mean, they could do this all over again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love how much we've delve into the outside aspect of sports and like the different opportunities that will arise for this team and your experience as well. But I do want to ask, what does this team do on the court that's special? just pretty much that.
They want to be a disruptive team. They want to be really good defensively. Their defense hasn't been as good as it was last year. The stats will bear that out. And part of the reason that changed is because this year they're a good offensive team. They figured out that anybody out on that court can score, and that, man, if you followed Colorado women's basketball for a while, that didn't used to be the case, man. They'd go minutes and in some cases almost quarters without scoring, and not even sniffing a basket. And it was, as much as I love calling the games this year, you talk about trying to call a game where you're down by 20 points and the offense is nowhere on the horizon. You're like, I don't even know how they're going to score. Like, they can't. I don't know what. They're playing great defense, but they're down by almost 20 points. And I don't think anybody out there can figure out how to score 20 points. And part of that is the competition they play with. I mean, the Pac-12 conference is the best women's basketball conference in the nation. I mean, I'll put that up against the ACC, the Big East, the Big Ten, the Big 12. And it is sad that it's going away. But at the same time, this year's team, they want to be a good defensive team. And so they work really hard at it to disrupt what the other team wants to do. But I think the hallmark of this year's team is that they can score and they don't care who scores. Frida against Washington State last Friday, she had 27 points. That tied her career high. I think she ended up with 7 points on Sunday against Oregon, but she had 9 assists. And she didn't care that she only had 7 points because she was dishing the ball out and playing good defense. And that's the attitude of everybody on this team. They just want the other person to do well, and they want the team to do well. So I would say they want to be a good defensive team. They want to be a lockdown defensive team. They're not quite that. They can slow teams down. This year's team can match the offensive firepower that other teams have. So if you play good defense and you can match what the other team does, that's how they've been successful. That's why they've won 19 games this year.
Yeah, I can imagine it's a really fun thing to cover in any aspect because you're doing it play-by-play. I've written about pretty much every game they've played this year, and it's pretty cool to see, there is that core four of Sherrod, Miller, Vonleh, and Frida, but it seems like there's a new person pretty much every game that can say, oh, they made great contributions. Like, oh, maybe it was Tamia Sadler, maybe it was Charlotte Whitaker, maybe it was Sarah Rose Smith. Like, there's a lot of those role players that have really made a lot of impact outside of the box score, even if, it's the starting lineup that's kind of carrying the load scoring-wise. So, on the court, I watched some of last year, they look way more in sync offensively than they really I've seen. I know they had a bit of a rough patch recently, but they started to get back to that against Washington this past weekend.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's, that's another thing I should add. They have depth and experience. I mean, I think that's the hallmark of this team, but the coaches will tell you they want to be a defensive team. I hear it in film sessions when I'm sitting in there with them and I'm watching them scouting the next team, or they're talking about the things that they want to do. And it's really, really, really about defense. But, yeah, it helps that they have depth. That's huge. Maddie Nolan coming from Michigan was a nice piece to add. She's such a great leader, and she jumped right in this team. She didn't try to take this team over. She really fits right in to what Buffs basketball is all about. And then Sarah Rose Smith coming from Missouri, she's another player that has a lot of playing time, playing high-level basketball, and she is a wonderful rebounder, somebody that just is going to go get the basketball and then does whatever else is asked of her. And the Buffs needed to have somebody like that. You mentioned Tiana Jones, who left. Sarah Rose Smith kind of fits into that spot. The difference between Sarah Rose and Tay is that toward the back end of Tay's senior year, she started knocking down some shots, but she wasn't a great scorer in college basketball. She was in high school, but she never really found her groove. Sarah Rose can score if need be. She just doesn't force it. So there'll be times when Sarah Rose may go out and score 12 points, and she's going to have 9 or 10 rebounds too. she may only score 2 points. She's still going to have 9, 10, 11 rebounds. So that was the added element that really jumping on with Jalen and Frida and Q and Tamia, all these players that have been here for at least 2 years to 3 years to, in Jay's case, is 5 years, just made this team better. And I think that's probably what sparked the offense, but it's helped with the depth and just to have that experience in close games. They've all been through this before. Clock's ticking down and you got to get a shot off or you got to defend or you have to Not their first rodeo, man. They're good. There's no panic out there.
Go ahead. Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, with all that being said, after this Oregon game, it's 4 straight ranked opponents in a row.
Yes.
And then, of course, the Pac-12 tournament and the dance. What will this team need to do to finish out the season strong and, potentially reach the national championship that you brought up earlier this podcast?
You've heard this before. They win out in the season, which is hard to say and hard to do in the Pac-12. They control their own destiny because right now they're tied with Stanford and they're a game up on everybody else. They beat Stanford, so they would have the number 1 seed going into the Pac-12 tournament. If they would win out, they would potentially have a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. They'll definitely be a 2 seed, and they'll host at least 2 games here in Boulder. I don't think you can possibly think that they're going to go undefeated in the season, though. And like you said, after Oregon, they get 4 top 25 teams. You got Oregon State. Luckily, you get to see them again, and you get to see them in Boulder. I think that outcome's going to be different than it was in Corvallis. But then they hit the road to Utah, and I know Utah right now, they're sitting in the bottom half of that top 4. For them, it's about getting the bye in the Pac-12 tournament. And so there's only 8 games left. So you better keep winning. And so if Utah can get a win, they keep pace, they knock Colorado down a notch, and you stay in that top 4, then they go to the LA schools. And right now, the 2 LA schools are actually on the outside looking in for a top 4 bye in the Pac-12 tournament. Those are huge games for both UCLA and USC. So they're coming after Colorado. You're the hunted now. You've got the target on your back because you're sitting up top. And just in the background behind that, Stanford doesn't play anybody else. They played UCLA, USC, Utah, Colorado. They're done. They only play them 1 time. There's no return trips anywhere. Stanford's got Arizona, Arizona State, Oregon, Oregon State. Oregon State maybe is going to put a push on them. They don't play anybody that's going to challenge them. Now, they may stumble, but probably not. I expect them to go undefeated the rest of the way. So that means if Colorado wants to win a Pac-12 championship, you have to win out. I don't know. I think Colorado, I think they can go to Utah. It's a hard place to play. I think they can go beat Utah, and I don't want to go past the Oregon schools, but I honestly think they'll handle Oregon Friday. They will beat Oregon State just because this team has that kind of experience to go, we're not going to let that happen again. They didn't play well against them. The Beavs played great, but they're not at Gill Coliseum anymore. They're at our house, and the Buffs play exceptionally well at home. Then you go to the LA schools. I think that's going to be the big weekend. And the Buffs will have an extra day in between USC and UCLA because that's going to be a big Monday game. So I think that's the big weekend. That will determine who's going to win the Pac-12 championship right there. I don't think Stanford stumbles, but I think if Colorado, at that point, if they have won out and they're going into L.A. and they can win both of those games, man, oh, man. I mean, then it puts this team on a whole nother level. If you win out, I think you get a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, and now everybody's looking at you as you should be doing all of this. Realistically, I think they split in L.A. It's hard to go and play 2 back-to-back games like that. I think they showed that here in Boulder. I mean, they played well against UCLA. UCLA played a lot better, but then they went in against USC and I don't want to say handled them, but made it look kind of easy, and that's a rare thing to do against a team that is consistently in the top 25. So The LA trip is going to be really huge if they don't stub their toe here this weekend and they can go beat Utah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of thinking along those same lines, so I'm glad to hear that. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad to see you guys are thinking the same way. I mean, for so long, Carol has had to pull me back because I go, oh, wow, look at how they're playing. They're playing so great. If they could pull this upset, we could maybe finish 5th. Maybe we have a chance at a bye. And she'd have to go, don't get ahead of yourself. I mean, remember what we saw 2 weeks ago. Remember what we saw. I mean, she's that dose of reality. She's watched a lot of basketball, and she's been doing the work on the radio for Colorado for years and years and years. She would be another fantastic guest for you guys on the podcast to talk to her. I mean, her wealth of knowledge. She's the director of basketball operations for the women's basketball national team. She's got 7 gold medals.
Yeah, that's something.
I mean, she has done so many great things, but she's watched more college basketball than I have, and so she's had to pull me back from the ledge at times and go, it'll be okay. They're not going to ever score. We may lose some, and then when I start getting too high, saying, whoa, we got to roll, and she's like, everybody else is playing too, and they're getting better, kind of thing. Then really that dose of reality that I need. It's a good partnership because I'm kind of the pie in the sky kind of guy as I'm looking ahead on schedules, and we can talk this way. The team never talks this way, but in the media you could speculate and and kind of hope kind of stuff. But the stuff that I'm saying now, I can't believe that I'm saying it, but I'm like, yeah, they legitimately can win the conference. The Pac-12 tournament, I think, is going to be fantastic. I mean, the action's going to be unbelievable, and that's hard to win that because you have to win. You've got to win 3 games in a row. Even if you've got a bye, you've got a Saturday, a day off, so you get some time to get ready for that championship game. But Buffs haven't been there; they don't know what that's like. So for them to win that would be amazing. But then the run in the NCAA tournament too, I think they could do some real damage. But again, there has to be a little bit of luck involved in it too. So.
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, we'll have to look into getting Carol on the podcast. That would definitely be.
Yeah, she's amazing. She really is. It's it would be a great conversation. You wouldn't have enough time to talk to her, but.
Yeah, this is a team you could really talk about all day. I mean, I've gone on and on in podcasts past about different games, how this team has gotten to where it is now, and see them kind of always be hovering around this top 5 to at least the top 10 pretty much all year has been insanely impressive in just gauging where they are talent-wise, because then maybe they aren't the most they don't have one single most talented team in terms of just offensive output.
Yeah.
When you look at a lot of teams in the Pac-12 also, they have either 1 or 2 really big stars, and JR said before that they're not kind of the team to have the superstars. They're just an amazing all-around unit.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's really cool.
Well, there's no Lauren Betts like UCLA has, and I'm calling out Colorado high school girls that have gone other places. There's no Reagan Beers like on Oregon State. They are their superstars. That's who the offense goes through. For them, that's made a huge difference for both of those teams. Just as an example, I mean, a Cameron Brink for Stanford. Colorado doesn't have that. Pretty close in Nettie. She's pretty good. She's being recognized now as a junior. Her senior year is going to be amazing if she keeps going on the trajectory that she is on. And remember, she won Most Improved Player last year in the Pac-12. With Alicia Peely. If her trajectory continues, then she is going to be a Reagan Beers. She's going to be a Lauren Betts, a Cam Brink kind of player that is that. Jalen Sherrod is one of those players that's now being looked at. But I agree with you. You don't need Jay to go out and score 25 points. You just need to run the offense. Yeah. You don't need Nettie to go score 20 points, although this last weekend she went back-to-back with, at least 20 points, which is amazing. If that's the case, Colorado's going to become pretty unstoppable, but you don't ask her to have to put those kind of points up because you got Q, right? Because you got Sarah Rose, because you got Charlotte Whitaker, because you've got other players that can do some of that and take some of the load off of you.
Yeah, and the depth is really important, like we mentioned earlier. Just all around.
Yeah, it's
really
big.
Just sound squad. Did you know maybe shift gears a little to
yeah, I mean, we've gone on, I don't know, much longer than I told you we would, but
that's okay. That's okay. Like I said, I got to pick my kids up. That's all I got to worry about. If I can, I get to Thornton, I'm good. Oh yeah, by the way, so I have a full-time job. I travel with the Buffs. I pick up some gigs here and there, and yeah, I'm a dad of 3 kids. So
I'm sure being the dad is probably the best one.
It is. It is absolutely.
But yeah, no. Anyway, reaching this kind of like final stage of the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I really wanted to ask you about, you said you've been here for 9 years. You've talked about being in Colorado as long as you have. What is it like, not only calling games for a team like this, but calling, I don't know, you brought up Coach Prime earlier, but, being a professor on a campus like this with all these things going on and all just these different changes?
It's a lot of fun. I was so happy when I got asked 3 years ago to actually come and teach, and I have to give thanks to the voice of the Buffs, Mark Johnson. He just didn't have enough time to teach all the classes that he was teaching at that time, so he said he recommended my name, and the folks here in the department got a hold of me, and I was over the moon to do it. It's been interesting to watch the changes over the last 3 years, even with the students that I've had come in, the attitude of I shouldn't say attitude, I should just say excitement of covering sports. Suddenly the campus is energized, with Coach Prime, with the success of the women's basketball team, with what the men's basketball team potentially could be if they could just get everybody healthy. There's a lot of excitement going on here, and I know we had to turn people away from my class, and I'm sure that's the case in a lot of journalism classes. I mean, I'm talking to Jared. I mean, everybody wants to come into the club, and they all want to call the football game. Well, you only get 4 or 5 passes, to do that. Sorry, you have to go cover tennis. Sorry, you have to go cover soccer. You have to go cover hockey. You have to cover basketball. You have to, all this stuff. But I've also noticed a willingness to really try to. They want to learn. A lot of the students that I talk to, they just want to learn. As you can tell in this podcast, I talk a lot and I get off track a lot, and my students know that, and they get me off track. But they enjoy, and I hope that they get something from the stories that I tell about being in the media and how I was able to finagle this interview, or how I called this game, or how I didn't call this game very well, and how I felt like I could have gotten better. There's such a, I think you guys get a bad rap as Gen X, as whatever you are, your generation. I think you guys get a really bad rap because I don't see that. I don't see the privilege. I don't see the not willing to work. I don't see the, here at least at this university, and the people that I run into, I talk about the women's basketball program, but I talk about the students that I have in my class, people that I've talked to that have wanted to shadow me at a basketball game and watch how it's done, that want to come to see you. There's a drive there. It may be different than what I had when I was growing up. It's different than what my dad had when he was growing up, but it's the same drive to do what makes you happy. And I think for you guys, for your generation, I just think you're more vocal about wanting to be happy in your job and not just go make a bunch of money, or not just go show up at a cubicle for 8 hours a day and go home and that's my life and I have to do it because I make money and eventually I'll find happiness. I think there's a good work-life kind of balance that you guys have been taught, I think, by your parents. And so I'm really excited about the generation that's going to take over. I don't know if we wanted to go that deep, but I'm excited just with the students that have come through my class and what they think. I think you guys get a bad rap. I think it's going to be amazing over the next few years to see what you guys can achieve.
Yeah, well, I don't know. We both appreciate that, and I don't know. We just love, hearing your insight just about just on that level and I don't know. I'm kind of struggling to find the words, but going into this podcast, I was like, oh yeah, we're gonna talk with Cory about women's basketball, and that's gonna be that.
Yeah.
And I don't know, just hearing your side of things from that perspective, because I don't know, I was kind of expecting you just to that question specifically just be like, oh yeah, it's cool, seeing everything, but talking about our generation as a whole and everything is, I don't know, it's really insightful.
Well, good. I'm glad, and I really do mean that. But I hope you guys understand too that I love what I do. I mean, there's not a bad time that I can think of with women's basketball outside of sitting in an airport for 2 hours at Chicago O'Hare trying to get home for Christmas last year. But even then, I was hanging out with the team and who was left who hadn't flown out and the coaching staff. And, so it's wonderful to be around them. But I really, truly do love doing this. And I love the teaching portion of it, which I didn't really even – that was never on my radar to ever be a teacher or a professor of broadcasting or journalism or anything like that. So that was, so I'm very happy to do that. But I'm like I said, I think the next generation, the world is in good hands if everybody's like people are here at CU. High achievers and want a nice work-life balance.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that you do this because you love it. I'm always happy to hear like anybody who does it that way, but I don't know, for me particularly, like I feel like I've had with the amount of opportunity I've had this year, I've also like I don't know experienced a lot more lows than I've ever had before, and with that, it's I don't know, I feel like at the end of every day I'm like, I really go to CU and I get to cover, one of the biggest football teams in the nation. I had to cover, I cover the men's basketball team while he covers more of the women's basketball team. Yeah. So I'm sure he's more with the basketball side of things being like, oh my God, I'm really covering, a top 5 team in the nation. Like,
it's been special. It's with this team in particular, it's when I was gauging sort of how good, I wasn't familiar with most of the sports here. Coming from Louisiana, like I just came out here just because of the campus and sort of the environment. And this team, when I watched their March Madness run last year, it was really the first time I saw something that was like magical about a team here. And to see it carry into this year and get even better and just sort of being able to cover it in that kind of way, being able to cover the football team this year as well with how much attention they got, being able to get on the field for some of these games before, during, and after has been unreal. It's been a surreal experience that I never really imagined I would get going into this field. But yeah.
Well, you got the bug. You're hooked, okay?
Yeah.
You're going to do this for the rest of your life. Somehow, some way, you're going to figure out how you're going to do it. I mean, you're going through, you're struggling a little bit. You're going through those, but again, you see in the back of your mind, I'm on this wonderful campus. I've got these amazing teachers. I've got all these people that are working hard around me to try to achieve some of the same things I'm achieving, that there's a camaraderie there that you have, journalism, sports broadcasting, whatever it may be. It's all there. And I have to say, and again, I'm really appreciative that you guys wanted to talk to me and get some of my insights, but also wanted to talk about the women's basketball program and have been very knowledgeable about what the CU women's basketball team is all about, that you can name names, that you can talk about specific games. I listen to, whether it be podcasts, radio stations that are starting to, they'll have coach on or they'll have a player on and do something like this. And I'm pretty sure they can't even recite who the starting 5 are. And that's okay because there's other sports out there and I understand that, but they don't really go very in depth. So I appreciate you guys did a little bit of work before this interview, and I appreciate that. That means a lot to me too.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It means a lot to just have you here, but to have you compliment us as well and recognize what we're doing.
It's what I teach my students. I be on time, be prepared, be honest. That's my thing that I tell them all the time. But and I kind of admonish them on the first day of class when I say how many people look me up, and a lot of times I get one person that'll go like this, and I go, "Why don't you want to know what you're walking into?" You need to know what you're walking into when you're calling a game, when you're doing an interview, when you go to a job interview, when you do all this stuff. I go, all that stuff's at your fingertips, man. Hey, 10, 15 years ago, not all that stuff was at your fingertips. You have that opportunity to get ahead. Go and do it. So I do. I appreciate the work that you guys, I know you did beforehand too.
Yeah. No, yeah, we appreciate that. I don't know. I have more questions to ask you, but we've kind of, exhausted our time limit a little bit.
I know. How long are people actually going to listen to me talk? My students have to sit in my classroom for about 2.5 hours, so it gets to be a little much. But
no, I think I've really enjoyed everything you've had to say, and just kind of mixing the impacts of outside the sports world with, the nitty gritty, the X's and O's of basketball, and your job. And just your experiences has been really cool to listen to. So I feel like, if they do listen to the end, if any listens at home have listened to this point, shout out to you guys, because it's been a lot. It's been a really, really fun podcast.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I don't know. I feel like they'd be doing themselves a disservice to not listen to this point because, as much as I hope that they have been able to learn as much as we've been able to learn just in this little time talking to you. So
that's great. Well, thank you. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. You guys could have me back after we win the Natty.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely.
But no, yeah, we'd love to have you back. Whether or not they win it or not, but I think we will. So
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm Oliver Hayes.
I'm Harrison Simeon.
Alongside with Cory Lopez, joined as a special guest. Really appreciate it. Appreciative to have him on. Oh,
and shout out to Roberto doing some video over there.
Yeah, behind the camera per usual.
Roberto's been in here nice and quiet and shooting all these great photos, so that's good stuff.
But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy listening to us, specifically Cory. If you want to hear more of him, he's the voice of the Buffs, calling all the women's basketball team, or calling all the women's basketball games. Number 4 in the nation. I'm kind of stumbling over my words, but yeah, thank you guys for listening. And as always, you heard it here first. Peace.